Now here's where you want to be careful about how you approach this module. How do we study and how should you be studying FAC 1502? First, the difference between theory and practical. There's an enormous amount of information that you're going to be introduced to. Terminology you may or may not have heard before, formulae, calculations, formats. There's an enormous amount of information that you're going to be exposed to. But that doesn't mean that I need you to know just how to define it or explain it. I want you to work with it. There's no point in being able to define a set of financial statements. I want you to create it. And you can't create a set of financial statements just by knowing the definition. So we have to be very careful about this. It's like saying you can run a marathon by reading a book by a previous athlete. You can read 100 books by athletes who've run the Comrades Marathon. It doesn't mean that you can run the Comrades Marathon. You actually have to go and do it. There's a lot of help in terms of the theory of how to run and how to save and how to make sure that you've worked up for this. And you can't actually do it unless you've practiced it. So you need to take the theory, you need to understand the concepts and apply them to different situations. So most of what you're going to get is a whole bunch of case studies that say this is the situation you find yourself in, how would you calculate this? This is what you're looking at, how would the financial statements look? So very important that you realize that FAC 1502, it's practical. You need to get down, do the examples, do the questions, and make sure that you're comfortable with actually doing it. Not just being able to talk about it and not just saying, I've learned the theory, I've summarized it and highlighted it. You actually have to do it. Let's take a look at the topics and where they fit in. What topics are we going to cover? The basic principles and spheres of accounting, your first chapter, the nature of accounting theory, principles, accounting policy, practice and procedures. Looks very daunting. It looks a little painful. It's a lot easier than it seems. We just want to start introducing you to some basic concepts. So these are some underlying concepts behind everything else. So it's some new terminology. So don't worry too much about that. Don't panic. You need to go through it properly, but it's a lot less painful than it sounds. Your financial position, financial performance. This is about your financial statements. This is about how we report financial information to someone else. Your double entry system and the accounting process is about creating financial information. Remember, we spoke about the difference between creating financial information and then how do we present it to others. We present it to others by creating financial statements, and we create our own financial information using the double entry system and the accounting process. So you'll be learning that. How do we collect and process the accounting data itself? One, when you're processing information, the adjustments you pass, how you close off on a monthly basis. So these are very practical, what your bookkeepers and accountants are going to be doing at the end of every month. We'll be looking at the cash and cash equivalents, how you account for this, what it actually looks like. We were talking about getting money in, holding money, giving money out, trade and other receivables, inventory, PPE, other non-current assets. So they're taking each different types of assets and different types of items and different types of transactions and say, this is slightly different, how do we account for that? This is different, how do we account for that? So we're going to be looking at that. Accounting for current and non-current liabilities, the same thing. How do we account for different types of transactions? More on your reporting, the financial statements of a sole prop. We'll get into what that is just now. And then your non-profit entities and incomplete records. So you can see your syllabus is kind of split between creating financial information and how we deal with different types of transactions, and then what they're actually going to look like in the financial statements and how we report on these to other people. So let's get going.